into UFOs. He's like one of the main celebrities they pull up when people start talking about like UFO real believers. He's done like little clips where he narrates things, UFO shows and shit. He fucking believes.
Well, didn't they just release that there's even more belief now about UFOs?
Yeah, fun. I don't know if it's real, but it's fun. That's how I feel.
Doug, I did a podcast with Jim Florentine, and I explained to Jim Florentine that what people don't know is that Hudson County, New Jersey, northern New Jersey, is the #1 place in the country where they have the most UFO sightings.
Really? Northern New Jersey?
Look it up, Jamie, if you get a minute, please, not to be rude.
But isn't that like near a couple airports?
No, it's closer to, like, you know, like when you live in New York City and you look at the Hudson River, they say that people go on their balcony, they're drinking coffee, they're talking on the phone, and they'll see a little flying saucer go by.
Really?
And I know for a fact that in 1976...
A little one?
Whatever the fuck they are. I know for a fact that in 1975 and 1976, you could check me out on this. A UFO landed in Hudson County Park. I was a kid, and the next day the feds locked off the park. They had yellow tape. They had samples. Go look it up, dog. There's a UFO. There's a... You see that's called... North Bergen is where I'm from. That's called... it's called, but it's a circular building. They did so much coke in there in the 80s, they called it the grinder. That's what they called it, because it was shaped like the Stonehenge. The Stonehenge. I have a couple friends that lived there. People that lived in that building have seen UFOs for fucking years. And if you go to YouTube, there's an actual North Hudson Park UFO. Wow. They dug up, they came out to there's a liquor store. And the liquor store guy says he's seen the lights. You heard like the organ music that they play. They landed. A couple Martians got out and took samples and got back in the thing and took off. There's a YouTube thing. There's a History Channel special about it. And I still remember being a young kid.
Did you find anything, Jamie?
That was what's popping up, all that stuff about that building. And
no.
Is there anything that says a UFO landed?
That's the story I'm reading right now is what he's saying, yeah.
And witnesses. You know, it's not just one guy that says, I know UFO. It's people who got knocked on the door and said, did you see anything at 11, 10 at night? And they said, you know what? There were lights flashing outside. They contacted police departments to see if there was any. They went full. Then the FBI came in, circled the park. It was by the Little League field in Hudson County. But it is, like you'd think it was Area 51. You'd think it was close to northern Las Vegas. The #1 place to see UFOs is northern New Jersey. They even made a reference to it in The Sopranos when he said something. He goes, what are you talking about? Last week you said you seen a UFO in Hackensack. Because that's where they're at. Hackensack, Moonachie.
Right.
All those. You ever go to Moonachie, New Jersey? A lot of ugly people. A lot of people with big heads. The only good thing in Moonachie, New Jersey is fucking Segovia, Spanish restaurant. It's been there since 19 fucking Schlemensky. I don't know. But that's the only good thing about Moonachie. I think those people in Moonachie have been abducted. There you go. And they back as big-headed motherfuckers.
I did a gig there a couple times.
Yeah, there used to be like a bar. There's a bar that did something in Moonachie.
Was that a Bob Gonzo gig?
Yeah, outside the Sea Corps.
Was it?
Yeah, it's outside. No. I think Bob is more down the shore and stuff.
He gigs all over
He had gigs all over, Bob. How I met Bob, Mano's Italian restaurant in my hometown. And my buddy's like, hey, aren't you a comedian? Let's take you up there. And we went up there, and Bob's like, I don't know him. He's an unknown. And next thing, Bob came up to me and was like, Doug, I got to put you up because my friends threatened me. So Bob put me up, and we've become friends ever since.
That's awesome.
I think I follow him on Facebook. We have a chat from time to time on Facebook. But yeah, for you UFO motherfuckers, look into northern New Jersey. That's the fucking motherload of them.
That's interesting. I had before, but I kind of
There you go. He won.
51 UFO sightings in 2018. You get biased because the story is always some person in the woods and they get abducted. They see a UFO in some strange town in the middle of nowhere. The aliens land and abduct people. You always think about it being a rural thing. But if I was an alien, of course I'd go to New York City. Of course I'd go to New Jersey. What the fuck? Why wouldn't you? You want to go see the craziest thing we have? You got like 7 million people stuffed together on a fucking tiny island in comparison to the rest of the planet. Stuff stacked on top of each other. Awesome, amazing buildings. All these lights at Times Square. Look at all these people mulling around, traveling over these bridges to get to this one hub, this one hive of humanity. Of course, if I was an alien, I would check that out.
Well,
why would I look at a barn? You know what I mean?
You used to joke that the United States is the Tijuana
of outer space.
Of outer space. Like that. Like, what are we doing this weekend? We're going to fucking...
They come down when they're fucking, they want to see a show.
They want to...
That was the whole bit, is that I think aliens come here when they're high. They just get fucked up. They're like, come on, let's go check out the monkeys. Let's go, dude. Come on, let's abduct a couple of them. Have a good time. Let's go see the monkey people.
I never saw a fucking UFO.
I want to. I never know.
I want to land and I want to see one of those green dudes get out. So I
thought I saw some shit when I was a kid, but as I got older, I thought that was like a fighter jet or something. That's what that was. Like there was something. God, it's a real sketchy memory. It's one of those memories that's like barely active. But I remember thinking for like a day or two when I was like a little kid, maybe I saw a UFO. But I think I was trying to convince myself of it. You know, I was bored. But I think it was a jet. I think it was something fast and unusual. Have you ever seen one of those stealth bombers? That looks like a fucking UFO. Have you ever seen one of those things in the sky?
No, yes.
It looks like a Star Wars
Like when
movie.
you go to like a Blue Angels fucking thing, those planes.
Yeah, they'll probably...
No,
those are like... I think those are FA-18s. That's what I think it is. I think that's what that is. I flew in one of those. I had a bit about that too. Yeah, you got to do that. You hold on to the hand. You got to do it. You hook. You either hold on to your handle if you're steering the plane, or you hold on to your straps if you're a passenger. I was in the passenger seat, so I grabbed a hold of my straps, and you have to go like this, hoot, 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 and you have to force blood into your brain to stay awake. That's how much G-force you're going through. It's insane.
Force blood into your brain to stay awake.
See, that's one of those stealth bombers. I saw one of those air over, I guess it's Edwards Air Force Base. Is that what the one is? Is Edwards the one that's out near Palmdale? I think that's it.
Yeah.
Because we used to film Fear Factor in Palmdale, and we saw that thing fly overhead like that. Look at that thing. Tell me that doesn't look like it's from another planet. When you're on the ground and you see that fly overhead, you're like, what the fuck is that? So I think that's responsible for a bunch of the things that people saw. I think it's military crafts.
Can I ask you a question on an article you pulled up, the 51 sightings? What type of sightings do you
Look
have?
at this fucking thing.
What is considered a sighting?
Well, the thing is, like, you just see shit. But how do you know if... What are you doing, Jim?
These are the sightings.
Okay, but go back to that video. Look at that thing. I mean, come on. If you're just sitting on the ground, you saw that, you're like, they're coming! The aliens are coming! That does not look like it's from this world. That thing is madness.
Especially with those two guys next to him.
God, it's fucking beautiful, though. It's like, what an amazing design. That thing flying through, it looks like something on a keyboard. You know, it looks like a symbol on a keyboard. And it's just flying perfectly through the air. That looks like the future. I mean, that really does look like it's from another world. I would imagine like little blue dudes with black eyes and blah, talking to each other in that thing. Going through fucking wormholes and shit. I mean, that's what that thing looks like. And what's the thing that they're going to have 100 years from now? Just imagine that.
Yeah, I just want to know what the logistics is for it to be considered a legitimate sighting.
Legitimate sighting?
Legitimate sighting.
It just means it's saw it. You know, you don't, like, if you're a lawyer, okay, and you see something, and then you convince yourself that what you saw was something extraordinary, and you have the feeling that you're looking at something from another world. But if it's just some drone or some military vehicle, and then you look at it, and then you convince yourself, then it becomes a bigger and bigger deal in your head. That's a problem with people. It doesn't mean that everybody that sees something is seeing that, but people are kind of full of shit.
Well, let's say there's a 100 call Martian. Mm-hmm. All right. I see a fucking thing. I call that thing.
1-800 call Martian.
Yeah, call Martian. Okay, whatever the fuck.
Okay.
1-800 Martian.
Right.
The phone won't stop ringing. Okay, the phone won't stop ringing. It will never stop ringing.
There'll be people talking to Martians.
My concern is, when do they consider it credible? What does it take for it to be credible? For me, for it to be credible, I got to see the motherfucker land, get out.
My take is usually military guys. When you have military fighter pilots, that's an extraordinary human. That's a, if you can be one of those guys that flies one of those B2s, for them to trust you with that $1 billion fucking spaceship, dude, you got to be an exceptional human. There's no room for someone who's full of shit. You're going to be a top flight fighter pilot. You're going to fly around with gunfights in the sky, because that's what they do. They have gunfights in the fucking sky. Those guys are exceptional human beings. So when they see something, that's when I listen, for sure. Everybody else, I'm not that I wouldn't listen, but I don't know. You might be crazy. But you might be crazy even if you're in the military. You might be crazy if you're a fighter pilot. It's 100% possible.
So those pilots and all those Air Force pilots that do test runs or whatever, they say that they see things?
There's a bunch of sightings. Not only a bunch of sightings, there's a bunch of sightings from the really credible guys. What is this? Fleet of UFOs followed U.S. aircraft Navy pilot says.
Yeah,
May
this is what
29th.
I'm talking about.
See, these that are talking about these things, these aren't guys with histories of embellishing things. There's, they have this, whatever that is. Is that radar? What are they looking at? Is that infrared? Like, what is that screen that they're looking for? Does it say what kind of image it is? Because it's like a weird look. It's not like a photograph, right? It's like a weird computer image. Because it's detecting it, right, with some piece of equipment, right? Isn't it? Like tracking it on radar or something like that?
I know what you're saying because I feel like I've heard that description of it too, but this article just says it's video of 2 aerial encounters.
That's tremendous.
But that video doesn't look very clear. Why isn't it clear? My phone does a better job than that shit.
They don't have very good cameras on those.
Cameras,
they have good. I didn't mean they don't have good ones, but like in order to catch movement at that high speed up there, yada yada, all that stuff.
Oh, so it would require some exceptional gear.
I think, and it could have also been at night. I don't know what time of day it was.
So convenient. So convenient that they never have a clear picture. That drives me fucking crazy. It drives me fucking crazy because if it is real, I want it to be real. Honestly, I really do. But when I look at it, I go, God damn, so many people are so crazy and so many people are so full of shit.
You personally believe, and so do I,
dun, dun, dun.
that there's other galaxies out there. There has to be.
Well, there are definitely galaxies, other civilizations.
Other civilizations.
Yeah.
Some form, somewhere. Out of the 9 planets, there's got to be something.
Brian,
I don't know what. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what they're called or whatever, but there has to be something. At this point, you have to believe that.
The universe is big. It's just too big to discount, to say, nope, I doubt it. Like, that's so crazy to say. Just because we haven't seen it yet, it's so big.
There's the explanation of what he caught and what.
He said that though track equipment, radar, and infrared cameras on his aircraft detected UFOs both times, he was unable to capture them on his helmet camera. Okay.
So maybe he couldn't look at it, get it in good vision or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or that's a good reason why.
I would imagine as fast as those goddamn things are going, it must be really hard to get a camera to be able to constantly focus in and out. And
it's interesting. He says that Lieutenant Ryan Graves, a squadron of UFOs followed his Navy strike group up and down the eastern coast of the U.S. for months. I'm telling you, that little fuck. I read something about the Hudson River, that all those people that live across the Hudson River, whether on the Weehawken and Edgewater side or the west side of Manhattan, those are where the people on their balconies see all that shit.
Look at this shit. We did issues with them when we went to the Middle East, Lieutenant Graves said. Imagine them following the war. Imagine if they were alien and they came down to follow the war. So they see the war going on in Iraq,
how crazy is
Afghanistan. They come down and they're checking it out.
Just to go on the cynical side of this, they're not necessarily saying they are an alien ship. They're saying it's a UFO, so it's something they're not sure of. What if it's some sort of awesome drone that some Middle Eastern company has and it can just follow shit or move faster or something?
Sure.
I don't know.
That would be the more likely explanation, right? Yeah. Terrestrial would be more likely that someone has advanced shit. We know they have advanced shit. I mean, we know they have incredible drones. The stuff that they can do.
Sorry, they got drones. The SEALs, you put razor blades on them, and they slit your fucking throat when you're driving. That's how good the technology is on those drones.
Jesus Christ. I wouldn't be shocked if they could do all kinds of things.
You could be standing there, and they could take the drone to just come down, and they put razor blades on them or some shit.
Well, you could totally see someone having a small drone like a small thing, like the size of a burger, that has poison in it, and you just slam it into somebody. I can see that. But you're seeing, when you're seeing stuff that's flying around the sky, most likely is made by a person, because people make stuff, and people know how to make stuff that flies around the sky. But then when you get to shit that like defies physics, like some of the things these fighter pilots see, that's when you got to go, wait a minute. You see these extraordinary feats of traversing distances, like they can get from one place to another place so fast it looks like they disappear. This is something they all talk about. They all talk about the insane speed at which these things can go. They can just change angles. They can just go and then take a hard right angle turn. They can do stuff that nothing that we know how to make can do. That's where it gets to be like, whoa, like nothing. It's not like it's like, oh, that's like a fighter jet, but like really fast. You know what I'm saying? It's like an alien car. Oh, it's like a car, but it's way faster. Like it's an alien car. But this is not like anything that we make. These fucking things, they fly this way, they say, flat, like a plate hovering over the ground. But when they go to fly, when they go to take off, they flip up sideways. And they have like the bottom of the spaceship is pointing towards where it wants to go. And it does something to space and time, make some sort of fucking magnetic gravity connection, insert big spooky words, whatever. They don't know how the fuck it does it, right? This thing can go like insane distances in insanely small amounts of time. Then when they all report the same kind of behavior of these, I mean, so many of these reports are like that. They're talking about this thing that goes insanely fast, turns on its side. It looks like a Tic Tac. It looks like a saucer. It looks like they're trying to figure out what the fuck the shape is because it's moving so goddamn fast. But it's doing stuff that nothing we know how to make can do. I don't know if it's from another planet. It might be from here, but it's exciting. It's exciting shit. I want it to be from another planet. That's what I want, like unbiased, like what I would love it. Just be completely honest. I would love it if it was aliens. But if it was people, I'd be even more scared because like, goddamn, people can do that. People can do that, and no one knew. Like if you can imagine a person who can make a spaceship that defies all of the rules that we know about travel, about air travel. If they can make something that defies all that shit, and somehow now they keep the whole development and production of it a secret, and then have this thing and take it off, and no one knows how the fuck they did it, that's almost more impressive than aliens. Because that's what these things are doing is if these pilots are accurately reading what's happening, and they're telling the truth, the thing that's remarkable is their stories are very consistent. There's a lot of very similar stories from different people that they make a living flying super fast warships. They see things. They know what the fuck they're looking at. They see something they don't know. They're like, what in the fuck is that? When they see something like that, that freaks me out. That's when it gets me. Because when some fucking kid's riding his bike to school and he looks up and he sees a UFO, okay, maybe it did happen. Maybe it did happen. Maybe the kid's being 100% honest. Or maybe he was bored. Maybe he was bored and decided to make up a crazy story and then stuck with it. And then after a while of telling it, maybe he believed it himself. That happens too. People see things. They don't know what they're seeing, and they decide that it's a different thing. I've said this before, but it's a true story. When I was in Alberta, there's wolves there. And I thought I saw a wolf for like a whole second. It was a squirrel. It was a fucking squirrel. But I saw gray fur movement wolf squirrel. Like, if you're dumb or if you're compromised or if maybe you're a little drunk, maybe you're a little tired, maybe you just saw something that looked really weird because of, whatever weather conditions that are affecting some part of the world you live in. There's things called ball lightning, flies through the air. It looks like a UFO. You ever see that shit? It's like a real natural phenomenon. Somebody might see something like that and then add a bunch of other shit to it. And that's where you get a lot of these stories. You get like natural phenomenon and then people adding a bunch of shit to things. But then on top of that, you have credible stories. And you can't throw out any of them. Like it's when you look at all these things, you can't decide just because there's a bunch of crackpot stories about UFOs that the ones by legitimate fighter pilots, that those aren't real. You can't look at it that way. It's crazy to look at it that way. because it's more likely there's something out there than there isn't something out there. It's way more likely.
When I was a kid and that happened in Hudson Park, I wrote it off. I didn't even pay attention. I remember riding my bike up there, seeing the Fed tape and seeing people with those orange protective suits on.
Yeah.
And I was like, these people are fucking out of my mind. Then one night I got high, 5 or 6 years ago, and I saw it. And somebody had posted on Facebook or YouTube, and I read more and more into it. And I discounted it until I read the accounts of the 28 people.
Yeah.
In that building, the liquor store, there was a guy who had just got dropped off a bus from New York. Because buses drop you off there from New York. Mm-hmm. The bus driver said there was a flash. He couldn't, there were just so many people with stories that, they didn't see a fucking guy get out. Only 3 people saw people get out. Mm. Everybody else discounted the lights and the noise and the other bullshit that went with it. I would have shit my fucking pants if I lived in that building and saw 3 little Martians get out. Or it could just be fucking. Who knows? Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, man.
I just wanted to tell you that's where
people can get freaked out, and they can, they can think all kinds of things that didn't really happen.
Hey, one was on acid. I thought it was I thought the FBI was out there with dogs. When I went out the next day, it was fucking a fire hydrant, all right? I dumped an ounce of coke down the toilet.
Oh, my God.
Because I hallucinated. Because when you do coke for more than fucking 10 hours, you start hallucinating. I started hallucinating. I thought it was fucking dogs and it was a fire hydrant. You know how stupid I felt the next day? Pretty fucking stupid. Pretty fucking stupid. I sat there and I went over and petted the hydrant. You fuck. You fuck.
This is a problem with any story, like all these fucking UFO stories. It's people's memory. Memory's not that good. It's just not that good. It's too hard to figure out what it actually looked like after you saw it. Like you see something crazy like a year ago, and then you try to describe it. It's too hard to describe. Like you barely remember it. Your version of it is a rehashed version that you keep repeating to yourself. If you saw something, like say if you were hiking and you saw a wolf, right? If you saw that wolf, when you try to describe that moment you saw that wolf years later, like what are you actually seeing when you're going into your memory? How accurate is it? We're always lying about how accurate our memory is. It's not that good. Like if you did see a wolf, which is an extraordinary moment, right? You're in the fucking forest. You're like, it's a fucking wolf. That's a wolf. And you see a real wolf looking down on you, a wild motherfucker in the woods of Canada, just looking at you, staring at you on a trail. Like that's an extraordinary moment. But if you try to recount that in your mind 10 years later, what do you actually see? How much do you actually see? You see this blurry, weird, fucking misty version, and you've got some words that fall into place that can describe it. But how accurate is your fucking memory? It's terrible.
How accurate?
Statistics.
Okay.
Like I can tell you about fights. I can tell you what year someone fought. I can tell you how this guy won and how he beat this many guys with a triangle, and I remember things. But if I actually have to remember what it actually looked like in my head, I can't really pull that up. I barely can pull it up. If I see it, I'll recognize it again. Like you show me Joe Schilling knocking out Melvin Manhoef in Bellator. I watched that KO so many times. A wild, crazy slugfest. And if I see it, I'm watching it happen in a video. I remember it. Yep, this is how it goes. Here it goes. Boom! He KOs him. But if I had to just pull that out of my brain right now, it's not good. Do you know what I'm saying? Like if I have to close my eyes and pretend I saw Mike Tyson knock out Michael Spinks, I kind of can see little flashes. I can kind of remember weird little parts of it. I remember the final right hand. Boom! He just sends him flying through the ropes. It was chaos. It was just like he's the best ever. But if I had to play it back in my head, it wouldn't be nearly as good as a video.
I have an engineering degree, mechanical and aerospace engineering. I promptly left doing that to go fly F-18s for the Navy as soon as I graduated college. Did that for about a decade, both operationally in combat as well as in an instructor role, teaching the new students. And we did witness something while we were flying in our jets, but We were doing it we witnessed it in the context of our just everyday flying and our missions.
And what year was it that you witnessed this?
So we started seeing these in 2014 was the earliest that I know. 2013, late 2013, early 2014.
And could you describe what was the very first experience?
Yeah, so for me personally, the experience was simply just flying out to the area like I would any other day. And instead of seeing an empty airspace with just my wing person or another squadron doing something a different block, there were all of a sudden a lot of different radar contacts, which is immediately a problem because, we could be hitting one of those or someone working in our area. And this was happening because we upgraded our radar the best we could tell. We were in a earlier radar called the APG-73, and we had come back from deployment. We entered a maintenance phase, it's called. We kind of do a little bit less flying, upgrade the jets if we need to, do any long-lasting maintenance, and we upgraded to the APG-79, which was a much better radar.
And what is the difference in the capabilities of the upgraded radar system versus the original system?
Mm-hmm. So, kind of practically speaking, it's like going from an analog TV essentially to like an OLED. It's, a digital modern tool compared to more of like an analog classical radar that has more limited range and has less ability to track multiple targets and things of that nature. So just generally speaking, we would expect to see, more objects if there were any out there or smaller objects, but there shouldn't have been any objects out there.
And so how far offshore are you when this is all going down?
Our working areas start about 10 miles off the coast, and then it goes out 100 or 250 miles or so, though we don't usually use those far eastern areas. But we would only see them over the water. So they would really only be in our working areas, maybe slightly in between the working area and land, but never over the land. Sometimes over the bays that are in the area that are quite large. But never just kind of zooming west over land or anything like that.
And is this restricted airspace?
It's not. So that's a tricky question. For us operating in a military operating area, it is not restricted in the sense that you have to be there's only one person allowed in there. You could have these little Cessnas kind of bumbling in there, but they would get called out pretty quick, both from the kind of air traffic control agency that's working out there, as well as the F-18s and the other aircraft that may be working out there. But in a broader sense, when we look at it in relation to our air defense identification zone, which is essentially a band of airspace that surrounds our entire country, if your flight path originates out over the water outside of that ADIZ and you proceed into that ADIZ, into our controlled airspace, then you do have to essentially have permission to enter that airspace. It's not a restricted airspace like a traditional bombing range, but it is protected airspace. It's our coastal air.
So you have this upgraded radar system, and what are you detecting?
So on the radar, really what we can learn from that is essentially the kinematics of the object. So where is it essentially, and what direction is it going, how fast is it going, things of that nature. We can't necessarily make out the shape or things of that nature. So it's a representation. It's like a block on our screen to show that information. And so when we see that on our radar, we can tell, where it's located, perhaps what's located around it if there's other objects we're detecting, how fast it's going, what direction it's pointed in, what direction it's traveling in. So we call that velocity vector. So if we see this essentially little circle, have a tail coming off of it. And that tail kind of represents the nose of the vehicle, at least as its flight path is going. And so with that, we would typically see an aircraft just kind of trudging along with a straight line, taking occasional turns. But these objects had a little bit more of a, I don't want to say random, but more less controlled flight path. That velocity vector would kind of jump around a bit more. They would not proceed in like a perfectly straight line as you would imagine like a flight navigation computer would take you, right? It takes you from A to B in the straightest line possible. These objects seem to kind of be moving in a direction that was not a straight line, but generally proceeding in that direction. And so they would kind of be meandering slightly, but moving in that general direction, both three-dimensionally and horizontally. So
winding around, going up, going down. Mm-hmm. So they're not on a flat plane, and they're not going in a straight line.
So I don't want to draw too many firm statements like that because we would see them being flat too. We'd see them perfectly stationary up there, regardless of the wind.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. So what kind of wind are you talking about?
Oh, gosh. I mean, at altitude, you can have anywhere up to 100, 120 knots of airspeed.
What is that in miles per hour?
It's about 100, 130, 140 miles an hour.
So they're completely stationary with 140 mile an hour wind.
Correct.
How would something do that?
It's confusing to me as well. Even if we had something that could just burn that much energy, right? Like if you had a sphere surrounded by little rockets, right? Just imagining something right now.
Okay.
And if you wanted to keep that perfectly stationary, right, against gravity, you could just fire all the rockets at the bottom really fast and hopefully keep it flat, right?
Right.
It's going to have tiny little variations. And then if you have wind hitting it and all this, you could potentially have those rockets try to counter it, but it would never be perfectly still in winds like that.
Because the wind's not perfectly still either, right?
Exactly.
It changes and varies.
It does. So it's almost like it's the wind. It's not even really fighting the wind, it seems. You know, it just seems like it's just there in a way.
Wow. So the first time you see these things, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, the first time really was, well, you know, what is this, right? It's not a UFO or something mysterious at this point. It's at what we're thinking at this point we see on the radar is just, well, our radar is broken, right? These perhaps don't represent physical objects yet because we hadn't, you know, visually seen these or seen them on our camera yet. And so, you know, we kind of like, hey, you know, what's going on here? You know, is anyone else seeing this kind of thing? But not really like investigating it, right? It's just kind of like, all right, there was stuff out there, but maybe next time we'll take a look. But the way our systems work, when we have all these contacts on our radar, and if we kind of just select one out with our little cursor there, all our sensors go to it. Our FLIR goes to it, which is our camera system. All our weapons, they have like their own little eyes in some sense, and they all look in that direction. And so eventually, you know, someone had one of these selected and flew close enough so that as they look at their FLIR system, their camera, they could see something that was at the spot represented on the radar, right? So there was something there.
So they were seeing it visually with their own eyes?
Not at this point, just on the FLIR system.
The FLIR system.
And so it's a regular camera and also an infrared camera. And so typically we'll roll around in infrared just because it returns a better image, typically. So yeah, you know, it didn't look like an object they were seeing on the FLIR. It just looked like a source of IR energy in a sense, almost as if someone was shining a flashlight. But something had to be there to be reflecting that energy or creating it. So at this point, to answer your question, now we're like, okay, this isn't just an error in our radar. This is perhaps, you know, we're thinking this is real. We have to really respect this as like a safety hazard now. Even if it's just a small, you know, however small ribbon of tinfoil, right? Like that suck down the engine can still take out an aircraft, right? So we have to be very respectful of that.
Like a Mylar balloon type thing?
Potentially, right? Yeah.
But how fast are these things going?
So sometimes stationary, right? Sometimes they would be going around 0.6 to 0.8 Mach, which is at altitude about, you know, 240 to maybe 330 knots, you know, around there.
So somewhere in the range of an airplane.
Yeah, a fighter aircraft would be kind of flying around at those airspeeds, except sometimes they would be perfectly stationary as well.
Right. So it's not exhibiting any sort of patterns that you've recognized in the past.
No, they have actually. So,
although with the stationary, no, right?
Correct. With the stationary, no. With the meandering kind of flight path, no. But I would also see them essentially fly what we call a racetrack pattern. And essentially what that means is they fly in a straight path, and then they do like a 180-degree turn in a certain direction. Then they fly a straight path, then turn again. You know, so that's what we call a racetrack pattern as opposed to a circular holding pattern. We did witness racetrack patterns. In fact, I think there's been some cases off the West Coast just the past couple of weeks where people have also been observing objects flying in racetrack patterns high at altitude with lights. So I do recognize that behavior, but I don't necessarily think that means we have to attribute it to normal behavior necessarily. That type of flight path is important because it's a very efficient way to fly, right? If you have to maintain the position in a certain area, you want to minimize how much you're turning. Because anytime you're turning in an aircraft, you're using more energy than if you were just flying straight and level. And so by having a racetrack pattern, it's an efficient way of holding in a position by maximizing straight and level time and minimizing your turn time.
And how long would these things stay up there for?
So from our experience, and again, we weren't studying these, but they were always out there. They were
Always.
out there when we took off, we'd see them, and then we go to land, they would still be out there.
Like every day?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day.
So you guys go from not having any idea that these things are out there to an upgraded radar system to seeing them every day.
Yeah.
What is the thought? Like, how are you feeling when these, like, is there an evolution of the thought pattern of how you're addressing these things and thinking about them? Initially, you're thinking they're errors. When do you start getting a thought that, like, what the fuck is this thing?
Yeah. So that happened when we visually saw one. And the first time we visually saw one, the object was directly at what we call the entry point of the area. So, that box that I told you about in the sky that starts 10 miles off the coast, there's a particular GPS, location and altitude where incoming traffic will fly in, and outbound traffic will fly in the exact same spot, but will fly out 1,000 feet lower. There were 2 aircraft from my squadron, VFA 11, and they flew, took off as a flight of 2. That means they're essentially flying in a formation like this. And as they hit the area, one of these objects went right between the aircraft. The lead air crew saw the object. The Dash 2 aircraft crew did not, which is not surprising because they're usually, you're very focused on flying formation. You're just staring right at that aircraft. The lead really has actual leeway to look around. So he saw it, and, he immediately came back. I have to assume he didn't have it on his radar because he wouldn't have flown through this object at the entrance point. He turned around, flew back, landed, and I was in the ready room when he come back, and he had all his gear on, which typically is not a good thing because you want to get that stuff off as fast as possible. So usually means there's a problem of some nature, and he was just sitting there saying, "Hey, I almost hit one of those damn things." And we all knew what he was referring to, even though we didn't necessarily have a name for it, just because we were seeing these so much. And he described it. He described it just as a black or dark gray cube, and that cube was inside of a clear or translucent sphere. And essentially, the apex or the corners of that cube, best he could tell, were touching that inside of that sphere.
And that description mirrors many of the descriptions that people have had of these, whatever you want to call them. Whether they're calling them UAPs now for some strange reason. UFOs I don't know. Does it have a dirty connotation to it? And is it tainted because of so many crazy people talk about UFOs? Is that what it is?
It does come with a lot of assumptions baked in.
It baked in. So that's something. But whatever it is, that is a design that people have reported seeing before. That this translucent sphere and this cube. Can you see through the cube?
Not to my understanding, no.
So it's some sort of solid black cube that's inside this translucent sphere, and it's just floating around and flying around the sky.
So, that's a good point. Is it floating around? Is it flying around? It's doing both, which is strange, right? Because you could think of that description and go, okay, that's kind of some kind of weird balloon maybe with stuff in it. And that's certainly, one way. If you just view that angle of it, then it seems explainable. But when that, the balloon-like object starts cruising down at, 0.8 Mach, that nullifies that particular idea. And you'll see that a lot where it's not just like that one picture, that one behavior. It's really, you kind of have to zoom out a bit and look at everything in relation to each other and say, okay, why is this weird? Okay, it was hanging out in a racetrack pattern. That's not exotic. But when you learn it was doing it for, perhaps 13 hours.
13 hours?
Perhaps they were out there all the time, So, I land and I go back. And we weren't on a intel mission to analyze these, right? We're going to do our training. It's very expensive, $30K an hour to fly these things, right? So really the only time we can put energy into looking at these things is when we're kind of transiting back and forth or waiting for a fight to start. And so, it's never like a dedicated analysis. One of the problems I've had is that, people haven't wanted to look into and to study this topic. And people ask me all the time, okay, what were you seeing on the jet? What were you seeing in the radar? I want to be able to tell them that there was a great thing that we saw, but an F-18 is not a scientific tool, right? We only get presented a certain amount of information when all the sensors essentially filter all the data out so that we can prosecute the targets and do our job. It's not some type of like analog, information we receive. So, just because, say, something is showing jamming on my radar from one of these objects doesn't mean the object is executing, electronic warfare to jam my jet. It just means that, it's doing something to our radar signal, and when it comes back, our jet is processing it like it's EW. So we need to get proper scientific tools to do an analysis on these objects instead of basing, a lot of our analysis right now just on tools of war that aren't built for that.
Right. How long can you guys stay up in an F-18?
If we're dogfighting, about an hour. If we're holding at 0.6 to 0.8 Mach, like I described them as doing, somewhere maybe around like 2.5 hours maximum.
And you think that these things are up there for far longer than that?
Mm-hmm.
So how big was this thing when this guy saw it?
So it's very difficult to tell in the air, but because they were flying in formation, we can make some estimated guesses essentially, and that's what we did when we talked about it afterwards, right? So the aircraft were about 100 feet apart. This thing, they estimate it essentially split the section, which means it went more or less right down the middle, but slightly closer to lead, which would put it somewhere less than 50 feet, on average, if they're about 100 feet. And then he essentially used that size reference to say, hey, this might have been somewhere in like the 5 to 15, foot diameter. It's, not a tight guess, but that's the best we could come up with.
And what is it like? Like what's the atmosphere like when you go back to the base? Are you allowed to discuss this? Is this something that's openly talked about? Is this something that you get ridiculed for?
It's just, like you would expect any group of, dude and dudettes, hearing about this to just kind of, do the normal reaction like anyone else and to kind of, make the jokes and then kind of get back to work essentially because, we're just so busy at this time, right? We're getting ready for war. Like for a lot of us, this is the apex of our career in a sense, to get ready for deployment, and it's kind of like the long blade gets cut in a sense in a fighter community like that. It's very much a trust-based organization. So, no one's out there looking to like make a big deal out of something that's completely irrelevant, in our eyes to our day-to-day operations other than a safety risk. That's really like as much as we could process it. So yeah, there was ridicule, but I don't think it was, I wouldn't say it was like over the top or emotionally damaging, but, it made it clear it wasn't something to like, we were going to like put serious thought and energy into. It was, hey, yeah, stay away and, let me know how you did in that next fight, essentially.
And when you discuss this, how many other people came forward with similar stories?
It was less about people coming forward because everyone was just like, well, yeah, of course, we see them out there. Like at this point, it was almost a safety issue at this point. Well, let me back up. At first, as soon as people, the jokes subsided when people eventually flew in a jet with upgraded radar and saw it themselves, right? So, it dwindled down where everyone was aware of this and it was just a safety hazard. But when we almost had the midair, that kind of upped the ante, right? Because we were kind of getting pissed at this point because, the high probability answer was that this was some type of classified program of our own making that had perhaps just started operating in an area they weren't supposed to for whatever reason. And that was kind of our assumption. And so we submitted a safety report because of that near midair, a HAZREP or hazard report, which is essentially a notice that goes out to the whole fleet that says, this is a potential hazard that could cause the loss of an aircraft. And, it was due to us almost hitting an unknown object of unknown origin. And that's how it continued for a while. And there was a number of HAZREPs about near misses. Eventually, they put out what's called a NOTAM, or Notice to Airmen, which is it's published on a federal website, which essentially lists things like, hey, the runway lights are down, or, they're working on this runway, or this area is closed for something. And we had one in our local area that said, caution for the unknown objects working in our operating areas. We just don't know what they are, essentially. So that's just kind of where it stagnated at that point as far as, resolution. That's
got to be a very bizarre feeling. You're flying around in these jets, preparing for deployment, and you see things that are, if not unexplainable, haven't been explained yet.
Mm-hmm. It just didn't fit into our framework, right? Even if we look at, so, when we really kind of were trying to hash it out in the squadron, it's, so, okay, what could these be? And even the classified, drone thing, and I'm not even going to consider all the things that have happened since then, but even at this time, the drone thing didn't make sense to us for a number of reasons. One of those is, why, right? Why do we have potentially hundreds or more, small drones that can perform better than anything we've seen, just hanging out, for years off the coast?
And is there a visible method of propulsion that's coming from these objects?
No.
What about a heat signature?
No. So
Whoa.
yeah, so there's no plume of heat coming out the back. There's no propellers. There's no wing surfaces that we've seen.
And when you're looking at it, are you looking at it through some sort of an infrared that will detect heat?
Mm-hmm.
You don't see anything.
Usually through infrared, yeah. And so it'll come back as either a white hut or a dark hut, which means black color represents heat.
Hut? What is hut?
It's essentially, if we're looking at like an object against a blue sky. If that thing's producing heat, then it's going to come out white in white hot. Right. So if I see a white object, it's going to be a hot object, and the sky is going to look blue.
What's that word hot you're using?
H-O-T.
H-O-T. Oh,
yeah,
hot.
like the temperature.
Like hot. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
A little New England accent coming out.
No,
there,
it's okay. I'm from New England too. I thought it was something else. I thought it was like a technical term.
Yeah. And I say that just to say that, it would just be like either all like completely one temperature, essentially, right? It wasn't like the skin of an aircraft you could see. It was just kind of like an emission of IR energy, like a flashlight, right? Sometimes, most of the time, it would be cold. It was like a cold object. So it didn't appear to actually be emitting heat. There were times when they did appear to be emitting as hot objects as well. So we did see both. So I don't know what to make of that.
Was there a difference in the way they were moving when it was exhibiting heat?
Not that I know. I don't want to say no, but we just didn't look at it deep enough to say that at the time.
But whatever it was doing, it wasn't exhibiting any of the characteristics that you would normally expect from a jet or a drone or something that had some sort of a visible method of propulsion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. So when these things are happening every day, and all these different pilots are experiencing them every day, this is essentially just from the moment of 2014-ish when this new radar system gets implemented. So you had one sense of what was out there, and then all of a sudden you have these new systems, and now you're like, whoa, this is littered with these things.
Yeah.
What is that like? What is that like? What for you personally? What does that feel like?
It's just comforting. We spend a lot of time and energy on the most basic aspects of flight, in a sense, right? Because if you can't just operate safely, right, you can't come back and land and manage your fuel and not bust through altitudes and all that, you can't do all the other stuff, right? And so we're very particular on those type of details. So to have someone operating in that area would be a massive oversight. So it was, in a sense, we kind of, at least I felt a bit let down, right? It was like, someone should be willing to look at this and deal with this problem, if it was going to constantly, it was not that it was constantly getting laughed at, it's just we always had bigger fish to fry, essentially, right? Which I respect and I understand, but it doesn't mean we completely ignore that, right? And we have to do more than just, we have responsibility, I think, as aviators when we're up there to report really what we're seeing, because we're on the front line of what we can see up there. And if, we don't have the command or operational support to, tell the truth about what we're seeing up there, then, things have to change.
And the ramifications of what these things possibly could be, how much does that weigh on you? Because if these things are from another world or from the ocean or from another dimension or what, fill in the blank, whatever you think it could be, that alone has got to be very weird to experience because this is not something that's being openly discussed. So you're just flying around out there, you get this new equipment, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, there's some stuff out here that we have no knowledge of, and it's moving in a way that we really can't explain. What is that like?
We never really appreciated it at the time.
Really? Because you're so mission focused.
We're so mission focused. And the point when we kind of left, our squadron, we left for deployment in 2015. And so this was still happening. It was prior to the point that they started putting that notice out to airmen, that NOTAM out. So they had still not even got to the point to have that general notice out. It was just people sending out the occasional hazard reports and left from an individual squadron. And then we left for deployment. We left for workups first, I should say. So let me backtrack a little bit. As we get ready for deployment, we have our date where we leave. But then about 6 months prior to that, we're gone to the aircraft carrier and to different training training areas to essentially get ready for that deployment and practice like we play. So, right, we start going to the boat, we live on the boat, we start doing tactics off the boat. And we left to go down to the coast of Jacksonville, Florida, on a event where we essentially do exactly that. We fly out on the aircraft carrier and we do a number of tactical missions to simulate that we are in an operational theater. And honestly, it's more dangerous and likely difficult in a lot of cases than the actual combat deployment. You know, we're preparing for every eventuality, air-to-air combat, rescue missions, everything. But of course, not everything gets exercised when you get out there. So it's much more dangerous and pretty intense. And so that's what we were getting ready to go do. And then we left and we did that. And when we got down in that area from Virginia Beach, we noticed that these objects were down there as well. We didn't know whether they came with us or whether they were already down there. But, once we started flying off the boat, about, 1,500 miles or so south of Virginia Beach, there they were again. And it was in my squadron again when the video that's known as the gimbal video now, when that was recorded when we were on that workup cycle out in Jacksonville.
We should play the gimbal video. Jamie, will you please pull that up? Because I want you to kind of give us an understanding from your own expertise, like your technical understanding of what we're looking at.
Yeah. So
here it is. This is FLIR footage? Yep. So
when I say FLIR, this is what I'm referring to. And right in the middle of the top of the screen, you see IR, infrared. So that's that infrared mode where we're seeing heat right now. We are in black hot. So that means objects that are darker are hotter. So this object right in the middle is putting heat out.
And right now it appears to be rotating. Is that what it was doing there?
Yeah, exactly. So we do see this object rotate. I mean, it looks like a gimbal. That's why it's called it, I think. I didn't name it. But we see the object essentially rotate from what looks like a horizontal position here. Those lines above it represent the horizon. So it's essentially parallel. There it goes.
And it's hard to make out the shape of this thing, but it seems almost like a disc with like a crown on the top and the bottom.
Yeah, kind of like it looks like almost like a little bit of energy coming out from the poles there, if you will. That's kind of how I describe it. I see like a little bit of the dark, heat emanating from there, or the energy as I call it.
And is there any way from this video, from this equipment, to detect how large this thing is?
There is. So the velocity vector in the middle there can be set to a particular size, and that size correlates to a particular length. So that in a dogfight, if you have, you're behind a guy and you essentially, his wingspan is equal to the length of those two lines on that circle with the lines coming out. You see that? That's the velocity vector. Then you know how far away he is, right? And so it's kind of like an analog thing that's not super relevant, like in modern age. But yes, there is. I don't know, however, what that is set to in this one, so I can't make that calculation for you right now.
Now, I know some people who have attempted to debunk this and debunk even the rotation of this object. How do you know that object is rotating? Definitively.
Well, so we don't, right? We don't necessarily definitively know it's rotating at the end of the day, right? We have evidence that it is, but I don't have definitive evidence that you're a conscious human being on the other side of the table with me either. But
I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean? Like, we just don't have that information.
So you only have video footage, and in the video footage, it appears right now in relation to where it sits on the clouds that it has rotated.
Yes. So we can also see if you and I know it's been done. People have created models out there that essentially look at the clouds and they draw out a flight path that this could be at. And the only variable is essentially how far away the object is. And that flight path obeys, an equation that can be observed pretty readily when, you build the little model. And essentially, if you're at, 6 miles or so, the object is proceeding in a direction, and then when it starts to rotate, as the aircraft described, it climbs and reverses directions. So you can't quite make that out, but when you actually model it out, you can see that at these ranges, it does what was claimed. And we're kind of skipping a little bit.
We're so vulnerable. And that's one of the weirder things. So first we should get into what you do, because you have a very interesting theory. Tell everybody what your background is, first of all.
Yeah, all right. That does seem like a good place to start. My background is in anthropology, biological anthropology. My research mostly focuses on evolution, anatomy, biomedicine. I've done some archaeology, various places around the world, in Montana. But the reason I'm here, because according to my friend Matt, we were butchering a mule deer, I think I shot. And I was like, yeah, I got to go to this conference. And I was like, do you want to know what it's about? He's like, nobody gives it about what you do other than UFOs, man. I was like, damn it, he's right. Like, I did actually used to do a lot of what I thought was cool stuff. Now, the main thing is that I've become known for advocating for this idea that UFOs and the aliens are actually our time-traveling future human descendants. I wouldn't even say as opposed to terrestrials, because I do think that's a component too. I oftentimes get pigeonholed. People are like, oh, you just think they're all time travelers. I don't. I actually say this all the time, but it doesn't matter. I do think there's a lot going on. But my background and the reason I approach this quest way is because there's a lot of characteristics of these aliens that look so hominin. They look just like us. And specifically what we'd see in our hominin future if the same evolutionary trends continue into the future. So I kind of just tie those things together. And even the saucer-shaped craft seemingly are time machines themselves. So kind of the Cliff Notes version.
It's a theory that a lot of people have independently sort of come to, right?
Yeah, especially recently.
And the concept of, well, if you just think about ancient man. I was watching this documentary on Neanderthals last night about this one intact Neanderthal skeleton that they found that was, it had sort of been, he had died in a cave, and there's stalagmites. Is stalactites or mites? How do you say it?
Tights are up, mites are down.
So he was essentially mineralized.
Mm-hmm.
There was stuff all over the body, and it took a long time for them to break this body.
I think I saw that. Was that on Netflix?
No, I was watching it on YouTube. Maybe originally it was on Netflix. But it was just documenting how strange this body was that they had found. But it was immensely strong, like much stronger than us. One of the interesting things was that their visual cortex, the part of the brain that would process imagery, was larger than ours, 10 to 20% larger.
Yeah.
And that so these things probably had better eyesight than us, perhaps even were able to see at night. And that this was a bigger, stronger version of a human being, like much more durable than what we are, modern 2025 Homo sapiens.
Yep.
If you just look, that's it. So that's one of them.
Cool.
Neither human nor Neanderthal.
Oh, really?
This is published.
Is this the same? This might not be the same one. This is maybe a different one. That's a weird one because what's that fucking thing on its head?
That's what it says. It's a stalactite growing out of it or something.
Wow, in a weird form. Weird.
Yeah, it's like a unicorn.
Like a crest.
They do have a sagittal ridge.
Yes.
Homo erectus had one. There's an offshoot in hominin lineage called the Paranthropus or robust Australopithecines, and they had a full-on like gorilla style sagittal ridge. Yeah, because they were vegetarians, so they just chewed all day.
Right, so they have muscles to chew.
Yeah, their face is huge.
Wow.
Neanderthals they were just big. It's just a robusticity thing, but there is evidence from Shanidar Cave in Iraq where they were using their teeth as tools. We think they were like tanning hides. They were holding the hide in their mouth and then like scraping all the nests off. Oh. And you can see that in the tooth wear. So yeah, they were pretty badass. They were the first. I don't know. I think this is cool, but a lot of people think I'm a nerd too. They were the first to use the flake. Like for 2.8 million years, we just hit a piece of rock and like, oh, this is a cool tool. But then they figured out that if you hit the rock in just the right way, the piece that falls off makes an even better tool. It took us like 2.5. Yes, exactly.
You make an arrowhead.
And from going on, like I got to work at a place called Chez Pinot, Jonzac in southern France for a summer, and it was a Neanderthal site. And we found these. Actually, it's pretty funny because when we first got there, these tools called MTA hand axes, and it was Schulian tradition hand axes. And there were only 8 found in all of Europe. And they said, if you guys find one of these, we'll buy you all beer and all the cognac you can drink. So we're in the cognac region of France. And we found one like the 4th or 5th day. We went on to 7 more over the course of that week. We doubled the number of these things in existence.
Wow.
In all of Europe. And they were not lying. They bought us so many damn beers. Like archaeologists like to drink. You know,
sure.
We dig and it's boring as hell. You know, it's not Indiana Jones. We're not running around banging hot chicks and flying on planes. We got a spoon and we're doing this for 8 hours. So, yeah, I actually found the last one on the last day and it was by far the worst one. Like I had to argue that it should even count as one of these. But yeah, no, it was a cool site. So yeah, they were doing well, but we were doing better. We came in and
one thing happened where we replaced them.
Yeah.
But the point is, as time goes on, humans today are probably the most feeble version of humans that have ever existed.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And we're the most feeble versions of people that have existed within the last century, right? Like if you go back to humans from the 1920s versus humans from the 2020s, people have way less testosterone now, way higher instances of miscarriages, way lower sperm count. You know, there's a lot of factors that are at play right now that are changing what a human is. And if you extrapolate, if you look at the future, you would naturally say, well, we're probably going to be very thin. It seems like there's at least some sort of a push to eliminate gender. Like gender seems like it's on the table as whether or not it's even necessary. There's all sorts of new technological innovations that are leading to the possibility, at least sometime in the future, of an artificial womb. Mm-hmm. There's genetic engineering with CRISPR and a lot of other different technologies that are being explored that we might be able to engineer human beings and then even create a complete individual human being without a mother, without a father. So if you thought about what that looks like in the future, like one of our problems on this planet is we all have different ideologies, different religions, come from different parts of the world. We look different. And human beings as tribal primates have a tendency to other. We other different tribes. Those are not us. We are us. Those are the enemy. We go out, but exactly the same. And we share one mind, you know, then a lot of our problems go away. Yeah. If we no longer have to compete for resources, we no longer have the desire to procreate and to acquire land and to be, you know, to have a territory, we eliminate a lot of our issues. And that's what these things look like. When you look at the archetypal, these iconic sort of shapes that have been on cave walls all the way up to Close Encounters of the Third Kind, one thing they share is that they have no muscle, they have large heads, they have big eyes.
And they're very paedomorphic, as we... Yeah, you just tied together like a lot of really important points related to this theory. Aspect of why they're always interested in our gametes, why they come back with that little machine on a man to collect semen, why they're constantly eating eggs from females and planting fetuses, pulling them out later. Like they're clearly focused on reproduction, gamete extraction, and one of the things that might be fueling that in the future, if these are future humans, let's just assume for a second hypothetically, is that they might be having problems directly resulting from these trends toward self-domestication, these trends toward feminization, these trends toward reduced sperm counts, which is 60% across most population of the world in the industrialized world, 50% across the entire world. Problems with reproduction, in vitro fertilization. Exogenesis chambers might help solve some of those problems, growing the fetus outside of the body. So yeah, and like you said, you know, what do they look like? They look like kind of a hybrid between males and females to some extent, but there's still an essence of gender. Like if you talk to Whitley Bieber, you know, he's with this being, he says in communion that I had a sense it was a woman. I don't know why, but I kind of sensed that. So it's almost like the essence of the individual, the soul of the individual still retains that sort of gender identity, even though our bodies are becoming more gender indiscriminate. I don't know. But yeah, yet another one of those ways in which we might sort of grow together as a species.
When you say they are extracting sperm, like how many of these stories do you take seriously? There's a lot of these stories.
It's a great question, yeah.
You know, there's unfortunately for any sort of spectacular public thing that's in the zeitgeist, like alien abduction, whether it's Whitley Strieber from Communion or the John Mack books, the guy from Harvard that wrote, what was it, Abduction?
Past the Cosmos and Abduction,
Yeah.
The books.
Great books. But these are all books about encounters, close encounters of the third kind with some sort of a being from another place. Whatever it is, it's just not a human being, and it seems to be technologically at least superior to us. And it seems to be one thing they all seem to share is they seem to be able to communicate telekinetically or telepathically.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, they aren't human, but they are very human too. So for instance, like that's one of the main reasons I started exploring this. I was kind of put into this when I was 8 or 9 years old, sort of activated in a way and put on this path by a weird thing that happened to me when I was a kid.
What happened to you?
Well, so I talk about it in 2 books, Identified Flying Objects and the Extraterrestrial Model, where I learned about a close encounter that my daddy was a veterinarian in Northeast Ohio where I grew up. And he was out one night on a call with another guy, it's 2 people, as far as Jalen Hynek's reliability scale has more reliability. There's multiple witnesses. It's also strange on his scale because they crested the hill. There's a bright light. This is an Amish country. There's no light in Amish country. And all of a sudden, this bright light darts toward them, hovers just above their truck, darts back to where it was, and straight up into space, like at incredible speed. So this happened before, but I overheard him telling the story to some friends one night. He got Whitley Strieber's book Communion, as most people did in the 1980s, and as they should, because it's a great book. And I walked into the living room. The book is sitting on the shelf facing out. And I remember it was yesterday, I sort of stopped, and there was like this light, a white light. And then I saw this image in my mind of like an early hominin, chimpanzee-like creature, a modern human, and then that archetypal gray alien from the cover with this information. What if they're related? What if they are us from the future? And obviously, I mean, that's why I became a biological anthropologist. People are always like,
so you saw this?
Yeah, it was like a flash, like a light. And, it's weird looking back on it. I know a lot more about these experiences. I've talked to people that have had these experiences.
What was this?
It was our living. So it was like you come in the front door and just to the left, there's this living room, built-in shelf, Whitley's books right there. I just turned the corner, saw it, and then like just kind of, it just came. Like I didn't know shit about evolutionary biology.
When
I
you
didn't
say
know
you
about
saw
your
it,
mind. Just this white light,
just an image.
And that image of the 3 faces, and then the question, could they be us from the future? And a lot of people are like, how'd you get into UFOs? Like, you're a biological anthropologist. It's the opposite. I got into biological anthropology to search this question of whether they could be us from the future.
Huh. So this, you felt like at that moment it wasn't just like a weird thought or a dream. It felt like a message? Like, what did it feel like?
Yeah. It was a tasking. I think Albert Sheldrake said it, that people don't have ideas have people. I think that was like hey, go do this thing. And I did. That's why we're here now, talking about it. And obviously, you got to be careful about like selection bias and confirmation bias. Like I didn't go into grad school. I also didn't tell anybody in grad school I was there because they would have kicked me. But I went into it with an open mind, but I was there to study these things because of that event when I was 8 years old.
Wow. Yeah, it is a problem, the confirmation bias. It is a problem with wanting it to be real. And I struggle with that because I desperately want it to be real. And so every time I talk to someone, I've talked to a bunch of people that are, air quote, whistleblowers. And some of them, I think, for sure, have been sent in here to distribute disinformation.
Yeah, no doubt.
For sure. Great place to do it.
Yeah.
I'll listen to you.
Yeah.
I'll entertain almost anything.
We need that.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, obviously there's people that are going to take advantage of it.
But
too.
I think it's important for me to say I'm not convinced.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much of this is horseshit, but it's not zero. It is the ultimate who knows question, but goddamn, I wish more people from S4 would come forth. If Bob really did work with all those people and they really were briefed the same way he was, if we could get more of those people to talk, that would be utterly fascinating.
Well, your show a big reach, so maybe this time somebody will hear it
Straight
and come
up.
forward.
Did anybody ever reach out to you that claimed to also have worked with Bob at S4?
A bunch,
Yeah.
and
Did you verify any of them?
no, you know, they could not be verified, and in fact, I think they were lying to me.
And
one
Bob
in
shoots
particular.
people down all the
Yeah.
time. Guys fucking standing on a UFO stage, lying bullshit. I mean, you know, so
Right.
no, he hasn't even. He was hoping one other employee would. However, I have had people that work at Area 51 confirm parts of Bob's story. One in particular saw him coming off the or he says he saw him coming off the Janet flights. I said, will you go on record with me that you met Bob there on the tarmac? No. Why? Everything we did there was confidential. We couldn't even tell our wives. Why would I go on record with you?
And if he did go on record, he'd probably get harassed or arrested or...
Yeah, he can't tell you what he ate for lunch out there. You know, that so, and one of the guys I was real excited to talk with just recently passed away. He actually started the bar that was at Area 51. So everybody told the bartender stuff. He started as a flower fund because no one would send flowers to wives when people died out there. But my point is, people have come forward to George, to me. A lot of people are lying, but it adds up over time, man.
I got more than 2 dozen people who have come to me with bits and pieces of the story, who had worked out at Area 51 that I confirmed were out there. Security people who had seen a disc under a tarp in a hangar. Different people had worked there at different times, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, who had little pieces of the story, not to confirm Bob. And then there was one that I pursued. I don't know if you want to keep going on this, but sure. I pursued this guy. I was trying to find in the early 90s people who were in a position to know about what goes on out there, and I found one. And he had been active in the nuclear weapons program. He had worked for EG&G. He had EG&G had the contract to manage Area 51 from the beginning, all the way through the first 30 or 40 years of it. And so I started basically stalking the guy. One of his sons was a state senator, and he had told me, he confided to me, that you got to ask my dad about UFOs and aliens. And another son had been an FBI agent. So I stalked the guy, introduced myself. There were a couple of public events where I would just show up, and he finally got confident enough in me to invite me to his home. And he gets out these scrapbooks, and he's showing me these stories and clippings and photos from the nuclear weapons program. And I'm watching and taking notes and stuff, and suddenly he closes the book and he goes, "You're not here to talk about this nuclear weapons, are you?" I said, "No, not really." And his wife walks in and she says, "Oh, you're not going to tell him that stuff, are you?" And then he started telling me. And then over the course of 2 years, I would meet with him, have a cup of coffee somewhere. I couldn't take notes. I couldn't record anything, but he told me the story. Now, this guy actually is someone that you've had reference to on your show. Remember Annie Jacobson, her book about Area 51?
Yeah.
Well, it's the same guy, but the story that he told me was different than what he told her. He said that they eventually told me that they had a live alien out there, that I could not go public with this until after he died, that they had craft, that it was in a special spot. Originally it was at Indian Springs, which is now Creech Air Force Base, and then it was moved to Area 51 when 51 became active, and that there was a very small group that tried to analyze this stuff. They didn't know where it was from. They didn't know how we obtained it. He said this thing was alive, and that they eventually were able to communicate with us, and told me that he was going to make a videotape and he was going to make it available so that after he died I could have it. Well, suddenly 2 or 3 years later, he totally changes his story. What had happened was there was a congressional investigator. His name was Richard D'Amato, and he worked for Senator Robert Byrd, and he oversaw black budget projects. And he got onto this UFO story from Whitley Strieber. And so he was assigned, find out what the deal is. So he went around the country, talked to different researchers, and came to me and wanted to know about Area 51 and Lazar. So I told him the story, and I told him about this guy. And he got permission for this guy to violate his security oaths and talk to him about it. And they had multiple conversations, and they went to the founders of EG&G, the company, and And it became a dead end. But after that congressional inquiry, this guy completely changed his tune. So he made up this story, which is the one that you heard from Andy Jacobson, that what crashed at Roswell was a Russian technology, Nazi technology, flown by the Russians, containing little concentration camp victims who'd been experimented on by Dr. Mengele. Completely ridiculous, story. But I think he got scared. He was a real guy in a real position to know, and had shared with his family some of this information. I think the story that he told me was legit. But if he made the tape, which I think he did, I didn't get it.
How much time has been wasted talking about bullshit in this subject?
Centuries.
That's part of the problem, isn't it?
People just make up.
Yeah.
And the more fanciful and ridiculous, the better, unfortunately. People pay more to hear that and consume it.
I had an operation one time after his art thing, somebody who was targeting me, and he had other people helping him, that can convince me that he had worked out there with live aliens. And I'm getting letters from his, supposedly written by his neighbors. Hey, you got to check this guy out, Dr. I'll just say X. He was taken away by armed security in the middle of the night. I think he has something to do with aliens. And from out of the blue, then suddenly I am at a planetarium event, and I'm going to speak about UFOs at some event at this community college. And the guy shows up in a men's room. Hey, my name is Dr. X. Standing there at the urinal. You're not doing a story about me, are you? So no. Who are you? What? This was a concerted effort to get me to believe that he had worked out there. And it went on for a couple of years. And of course, it was complete bullshit. When I finally did dig into his background, I was able to document where he had worked and what he'd been doing through most of his life. And it was just like a fantasy role-playing thing.
Whatever the hell's